Let's show this prehistoric bitch how we do things downtown.
Back then, a small but determined supernatural comedy from Columbia Pictures came to theaters in 1984 and somehow turned New York City into the ghost-infested capital of the universe. Yeah, that was Ghostbusters. Bill Murray played Peter Venkman, the smart-talking scientist who treated demonic possession like it was only a small problem. Dan Aykroyd was Ray Stantz, the wide-eyed true believer who probably had ghost posters on the walls of his childhood bedroom. Harold Ramis gave us Egon Spengler, the calm and serious brain of the team. Ernie Hudson joined as Winston Zeddemore. Sigourney Weaver played Dana Barrett, and Rick Moranis was Louis Tully. Together they gave us proton packs, slime, and terror dogs. But behind all the jokes and all the ectoplasm was a movie production that was held together with caffeine, improvisation, and tired but brilliant minds. Today we're diving into 15 weird facts about Ghostbusters. Now, before we turn on the proton packs, hit that like button and subscribe. It helps this channel bring up more forgotten Hollywood stories than the United States Environmental Protection Agency ever stopped ghost contaminant units.
All right, now let's get into it with number 1, Ghostbusters in space. Dan Aykroyd's original script, titled Ghost Smashers, which really tells you everything, didn't take place in New York City. It happened in the future. An interdimensional ghost hunting team jumping between planets, dimensions, and timelines like paranormal Uber drivers. Oh, and Stay Puft, that giant marshmallow man we remember as the big final moment, was originally just one of many giant monsters walking around and smashing things.
The script also had an illegal ghost storage facility that explodes and creates a 25-kilometer sinkhole. So Ivan Reitman read all of this, loved the idea, and asked one very reasonable question. Cool idea. Do you have $200 million just sitting around? This was 1983. A $200 million budget was like asking for the GDP of a medium-sized country. It was never going to happen. So Reitman suggested something wild. What if, and just listen to him, the whole story took place in modern-day New York City, a story about guys starting a paranormal small business, problems with rent, angry customers, a ghost exploding in a hotel hallway. Suddenly, it became funnier, cheaper, and much more grounded. Harold Ramis came in to reshape the characters, tighten the story, and keep all the sci-fi ideas that Dan Aykroyd loved. And just like that, Ghostbusters changed from a $200 million space adventure into one of the most loved New York City comedies of the 1980s.
Number 2. Bill Murray improvised so much that they basically stopped trying to control him.
Bill Murray doesn't really play characters. He shows up, brings chaos, and everyone else just tries to survive the scene. Ghostbusters is where he perfected that style. Peter Venkman was supposed to be sarcastic and charming. Murray looked at that idea and turned Venkman into a non-stop improv machine. The studio tried to give him limits. The script tried to give him exact lines, but neither one worked. Some of the movie's most famous lines were never written. We came, we saw, we kicked its ass.
We came, we saw, we kicked its ass.
He did many different versions of that line, and they simply couldn't leave it out. He's an ugly little spud, isn't he? Totally improvised while reacting to Slimer. Sorry you and I didn't get more time to chat. A quick improvised line that tells you everything about Venkman's ego in 7 words. You can see Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis trying hard to stay in character. I mean, they are barely keeping it together. Bill Murray's improvisation was wild, the kind that gives a movie its whole personality. And without it, Ghostbusters would feel too scripted. Nobody was going to let that happen.
Just asking. Are you, Alice, menstruating right now?
What has that got to do with it?
Back off, man. I'm a scientist.
Number 3. Ivan Reitman convinced Columbia Pictures to approve a budget that should have been impossible. So once the new idea of setting Ghostbusters in modern-day New York City was accepted, all the budget problems disappeared, right? Well, that would be wrong. Reitman had convinced Dan Aykroyd to drop the interdimensional space opera. Harold Ramis had come in to tighten the script, and the creative team was finally working together. Now they just needed Columbia Pictures to write the check. Here is where Reitman pulled off one of his greatest producing moves ever, asking for something huge and actually getting it. When the Columbia chairman, Frank Price, asked the obvious question, So, how much is this going to cost? Reitman didn't hesitate. Around $25 to $30 million. Now, for context, that was 3 times the budget of Stripes for a comedy. Most studios would have laughed him out of the room, but Price said yes, and that yes was all Reitman needed. The moment they got the green light, Reitman and the team moved fast. Aykroyd and Ramis kept improving the script. The effects team started designing proton packs, ghost traps, and giant marshmallow men completely from scratch, a full special effects system being built in real time for a comedy that had now become one of the most expensive ones ever approved. Reitman's gamble paid off so well that Ghostbusters became the highest-grossing comedy of its time. Sometimes, the best producing trick in Hollywood is knowing exactly how much you can ask for and having the courage to ask for it.
Number 4, Dan Aykroyd's ghost hunting family history and his homemade demon knowledge. Ever wonder why Ghostbusters sounds so strangely confident when talking about all that paranormal language? Well, that's because Dan Aykroyd basically learned it at home with his family. He doesn't just play a guy who is obsessed with ghosts. He comes from a whole family line of paranormal believers. His great-grandfather was a documented spiritualist. His father, Peter H. Aykroyd, wrote a book about ghosts. The family even held seances. Most kids grew up hearing bedtime stories, but Dan Aykroyd grew up with Ouija boards and light reading about ectoplasm. So when it was time to write Ghostbusters, he didn't have to invent the fake science. He already spoke fluent paranormal nonsense. But here is where it gets fun. Zool and Vince Clortho, the demigod, gatekeeper, and keymaster with the world's worst meet-cute, were not taken from real mythology. Dan Aykroyd simply made them up, but he made them sound so real, so perfectly ancient, everyone just assumed he had taken them from page 742 of some obscure folklore textbook. Ghostbusters didn't just catch ghosts, it convinced us that there was a whole paranormal history behind it that never actually existed. And honestly, we believed every word.
Number 5. The library ghost was so scary that they had to make it less intense. Ghostbusters begins with a librarian being attacked by a ghost. Do you remember that scene?
I know. Do exactly as I say. Get ready. Ready? Get her!
The floating card catalog, the spooky whoosh, a quick scare, and then we move right into the story. Yeah, that's the second version of that scene. The original one was pure nightmare material. The first library ghost design came from Bernie Wrightson, a legendary horror artist, the guy who illustrated Swamp Thing and basically defined what creepy looks like on paper. And he did not hold back. This wasn't just a creepy old librarian. This was a twisted, demonic, evil librarian that would haunt your dreams. They filmed it, they edited it, they showed it to test audiences in February of '84, and those audiences didn't laugh, they didn't gasp, they didn't even scream. They pulled back in their seats. The feeling in the room was, why did you do this to us? Not exactly the reaction you want for your comedy. So the effects team went back to the drawing board, softened the design, filmed the whole transformation scene again, reduced the terror, and turned it into the quick jump scare we know today. This created a perfect opening that says, yes, this movie has ghosts, real ones, but we promise you'll survive.
Number 6. Stay Puft Marshmallow Man needed 3 performers and 50 gallons of shaving cream to bring to life, and it nearly killed a person. The Stay Puft Marshmallow Man looks cute, like a giant sugary cousin of the Michelin Man who wandered in from Candyland.
Well, there's something you don't see every day.
Tried to think of the most harmless thing.
You wanted to hug him, you wanted to eat him, and you definitely did not want to be him. The suit was so big and became so hot that they needed 3 different performers to take turns wearing it. Billy Bryan, who also helped design the costume, did most of the walking around and smiling. But whenever Stay Puft needed to stop, burn things, or explode, stunt professionals Tony Cesare and Bill Couch Jr. stepped in. It turns out that creating the kind of destruction that no friendly, chubby dessert should ever cause needs extra help. And there was not just one suit either. They had to build 3. All of them were heavy, all of them were sweaty, and all of them were barely ventilated marshmallow ovens with very bad visibility and even worse movement. But the real chaos happened at the end, the marshmallow explosion.
That goo falling on New York City wasn't marshmallow, it was shaving cream, 50 gallons of it. William Atherton, who played Walter Peck, the guy who shuts down the grid like it's his personal vendetta, was supposed to get soaked in it, but Atherton had good survival instincts. He asked if they could try it on a stuntman first. Smart move. The effects team thought the shaving cream would float down gently, like feathers, snow, or something nice. But what actually happened was that it fell like a wet, soapy anvil and flattened the stuntman. Atherton watched and politely asked for some changes. They thinned the mixture, made it lighter, and successfully avoided turning Walter Peck into Walter Pancake. Ernie Hudson later said that the shaving cream gave the whole cast rashes after hours of filming in it. Hollywood magic at its best, ladies and gentlemen. Sometimes it even leaves a mark, literally.
Number 7. Ghostbusters filmed scenes all over New York City and got shouted at the whole time. Filming Ghostbusters in New York was like working inside a loud beehive, and the crew was not following the normal rules. Many outside shots, especially the famous montage, were filmed without permits. Rockefeller Center, Chinatown, the United Nations, there were no permits for those places. Associate producer Joe Mudjack said they filmed most of it in a single day, running all over Manhattan like guerrilla filmmakers. In one shot, you can actually see a security guard chasing them. They decided to keep that shot anyway. The big scenes were official though. They got permission to film in the New York Public Library's Rose Main Reading Room, but only from 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. The entire library scene had to be set up, filmed, and finished in just 4 hours. But the real trouble came from the locals. New Yorkers walked into shots, yelled at the actors, and complained about traffic. One street preacher on Fifth Avenue was so loud that the crew reportedly had to pay him to stop for a while. Ghostbusters even had a real budget item called "Make the Guy with the Megaphone Go Away." And then there was Bill Murray. Crowds would gather and shout jokes at the cast, especially Murray, until he stopped what he was doing and told them a few jokes back. Just imagine that. One of the most loved comedians in America could not finish a scene because some guy from Queens decided Murray owed him a private stand-up show between takes. Murray would make a few funny jokes, the crowd would cheer, and the assistant directors would quietly go crazy trying to keep the filming on schedule. It was messy, noisy, and wonderfully real. That is why New York feels like a character.
Number 8. Proton packs were so heavy that the cast needed chiropractors on speed dial. Now yeah, the proton packs look cool. That satisfying sound, woo, when they fire them up.
Okay, all right. Oh, nice shooting, Tex.
Very sleek, very heroic. Wearing one was a completely different story though. Think CrossFit with a side of sciatica. The Hero proton packs, the detailed ones with working lights and electronics, weighed 30 to 35 pounds. Some crew members said the fully rigged versions were closer to 50 pounds. At first, there were no lighter versions, so the actors spent hours walking around New York City with what felt like mini refrigerators strapped to their backs and just had to deal with it. Bill Murray called the experience miserable. When he had to wear one again for Ghostbusters Afterlife, he upgraded his review to torture.
She's uncrossing the street!
Dan Aykroyd, who was usually happy and excited about everything related to ghosts and the supernatural, quietly agreed. That is how you know it was really bad. The cast turned the pain into a running joke. They would finish a take, look at each other like tired dock workers, and mumble, "Well, that was definitely the final take." It never actually was. Eventually, rubber stunt packs were made so everyone could stop slowly suffering between shots. And by the time the 2016 reboot came around, the crew, after learning from many years of Ghostbusters back pain, built special chairs with ridges designed to hold the pack so actors could actually sit down without collapsing like overcooked spaghetti. Alright, quick pause, because if you are enjoying this trip through haunted New York and wild Hollywood chaos, make sure to like and subscribe. It helps keep this channel running longer than a ghost containment unit on backup power. Now let's get back to the countdown with number 9. Winston Zeddemore was supposed to be a major badass until the studio made him smaller overnight. Before Ernie Hudson ever wore the jumpsuit, Winston was meant to be a big part of Ghostbusters. In the script Hudson auditioned for, Winston had a full backstory. He was a former Air Force major and demolitions expert, and if Eddie Murphy, the original choice for the role, had agreed to do it, Winston probably would have had his own theme song at a chase scene.
Ray, when someone asks you if you're a god, you say yes!
But the night before filming, Ernie Hudson got a new script. It was basically a ghost of the one he had signed up for. Winston didn't appear until page 68. His detailed backstory was gone, his big moments were gone, and his character arc was gone too. The studio decided to make the roles of the established stars, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and Harold Ramis, bigger, since they were already comedy royalty and box office gold. The message was clear. The studio was betting on the SNL trio, and Winston got squeezed in the process. Winston was rewritten as the everyman. Ernie Hudson has always been honest about how tough the change was, but even with all the rewrites, Winston became a fan favorite. He deserved more screen time, but Hudson took a smaller role and made it essential without losing a single bit of dignity. Number 10. The theme song was so catchy, it caused a legal battle. The Ghostbusters theme didn't just take over the radio in 1984, it also started one of the silliest music fights of that decade. Ray Parker Jr. got the idea from a silly late-night commercial with a cheesy call-in slogan.
There's something strange in your neighborhood.
Light bulb moment. Who you gonna call? He ran back to the studio and had only a few days to finish the song. Now here's where it got interesting. The filmmakers had been using Huey Lewis in the News' I Want a New Drug as a temporary track while editing. They even asked Huey to write the real theme. He said no. He was already working on the Back to the Future soundtrack. So the producers gave Parker the footage with Lewis's song playing in the background and said, make something like this. Parker did it.
Running through your head. Who can you call?
Ghostbusters!
The song first appeared at number 68 on the Billboard Hot 100 in June 1984 and reached number 1 by August, staying there for 3 weeks. It even got an Oscar nomination.
Freaky ghost, baby, you better call
Ghostbusters!
Then Huey noticed the song sounded a little too much like his own. Lewis sued Parker and Columbia Pictures for copying it in 1985. The case was settled out of court for an unknown amount, said to be around $5 million, and both sides had to keep it secret. Case closed. Everyone moved on, right? Not exactly. In 2001, Huey appeared on VH1's Behind the Music and casually talked about the settlement, which he definitely wasn't supposed to do. Parker sued him for breaking the secrecy agreement and won. Parker said he got a lot of money the second time too. Today, the song still says it was written by Ray Parker Jr. No credits changed, but the lawsuit became almost as famous as the song itself. It's still a hit though, and it always will be.
Who you gonna call? I can't hear you.
Number 11. The title fight that made the real Ghostbusters. Now, before proton packs, the biggest fight in Ghostbusters history didn't happen in New York. It happened in a boardroom. Columbia Pictures did not own the name Ghostbusters. That belonged to Filmation, the studio behind a 1975 live-action kids show called The Ghostbusters, which starred 2 human detectives and a gorilla named Tracy.
A lot of people have done that. Huh.
With one ball?
You two go get our next Ghostbusting assignment and don't hurry back. Huh? Come on, Tracy.
So when Columbia started making their supernatural comedy, they ran into a problem. During filming, the cast and crew used temporary titles like Ghost Smashers, Ghost Blasters, and Ghost Stoppers. Basically, every name you'd see on a cheap Halloween costume at a grocery store. The problem was, everyone on set kept shouting Ghostbusters during street scenes. Anyway, Columbia panicked, wrote a big check, and bought the name from Filmation for a reported $500,000 plus a share of the profits. Expensive, yes, but totally necessary. Then came the cartoon war. When the movie became a huge hit, both Columbia and Filmation wanted to make money. Filmation released their own animated series based on their old gorilla-focused show and simply called it Ghostbusters. Columbia and DIC responded with a cartoon based on their movie, and to make it very clear which was which, they called it The Real Ghostbusters. It's one of the weirdest, silliest title fights in pop culture history. And honestly, we kinda love them for it. Number 12. Ghostbusters somehow got a PG rating and accidentally helped create PG-13. In 1984, the MPAA had 3 ratings: G, PG, and good luck, kids. Ghostbusters jumped right into that mess with demons, terror dogs, jump scares, and a ghost who got way too friendly with Ray. The rating was PG. Bring the whole family. There was no PG-13 yet. That category didn't exist, and Ghostbusters wasn't alone. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom ripped hearts out of chests. Gremlins turned Christmas into a bloodbath, but all of it was PG and shown to unsuspecting third graders. Parents freaked out. The complaints got so loud that Steven Spielberg called MPAA President Jack Valenti and suggested they needed something between mild family fun and human sacrifice. On July 1, 1984, PG-13 was born. The first film with it was Red Dawn. But Ghostbusters did more than change ratings. It became the guide for comedy horror blockbusters. Big effects, real scares, and characters making jokes while fighting supernatural threats. That formula still drives Hollywood today. Not bad for a film that told parents, relax, it's PG. Number 13. Ghostbusters has changed itself more times than the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man has calories. Some franchises fail after just one sequel. Ghostbusters looked at that and said, nah, we're fine. 4 decades, 3 reboots, 2 timelines, and at least 17 different ideas of what ectoplasm should look like. Let's go through the resurrections. First, there was Ghostbusters 2 in 1989.
Get back in the painting!
All right, go find a shady spot.
The original team came back. Murray, Aykroyd, Ramis, and Hudson. They fought mood slime and a haunted painting called Vigo the Carpathian.
You know, normal sequel stuff. It made $215 million worldwide, which sounds good until you remember the first film made almost twice that. Critics were unimpressed, fans came mostly out of loyalty, and everyone quietly agreed that lightning doesn't strike the same containment unit twice. Then came Ghostbusters Answer the Call in 2016.
Well, it's been a very long day. Why don't you take a seat? Please sit.
Don't mind if I do. I do appreciate the joke.
It was a full reboot with an all-female team. Kristen Wiig, Melissa McCarthy, Kate McKinnon, and Leslie Jones. They had new gear, a neon glow-up, and Chris Hemsworth playing a receptionist so clueless it became its own special effect. It made $229 million on a $144 million budget, which in Hollywood means it didn't lose money, but nobody was celebrating. Critics liked it, a loud part of the internet didn't. Sony moved on. Ghostbusters Afterlife came in 2021 and went full legacy sequel. Egon's grandkids, McKenna Grace and Finn Wolfhard, find Grandpa's ghost hunting gear in rural Oklahoma. Paul Rudd shows up as a seismologist, love interest, and guy who eats a lot of Stay Puffs like popcorn. It earned $24 million during a pandemic, which is basically $400 million in normal times. Critics gave it a modest thumbs up. Audiences loved it, 94% approval. Nostalgia, it turns out, still makes money. Finally, there was Frozen Empire in 2024. Everyone came back to New York. Murray, Aykroyd, Hudson, Annie Potts, teaming up with the Afterlife kids, plus Kumail Nanjiani and Patton Oswalt. It made over $200 million worldwide and pushed the franchise past the billion-dollar mark. Critics stayed cold, and audiences didn't really care. 4 decades in, the franchise still refuses to stay dead. At this point, it might actually be a ghost itself. Number 14. Ghostbusters was shown with 70% of its effects missing, and audiences still loved it. Ghostbusters had one of the tightest production schedules in Hollywood history, 13 months from green light to release. That's not a schedule, that's a dare. When the studio showed the movie to executives and test audiences, about 70% of the visual effects weren't done. Instead of Slimer, viewers saw blobs of temporary animation. Instead of proton streams, they got scribbles and notes that literally said, "Beam here."
Instead of terror dogs, they saw placeholders that looked like final week sketches from a sleep-deprived art student. Audiences didn't care. They filled in the blanks and loved it anyway. Ivan Reitman said the screenings proved something important. The movie didn't need finished ghosts. It needed the Ghostbusters. The characters carried everything. Meanwhile, Boss Film Studios, created just to make this movie, worked around the clock, inventing half the technology as they went. They finished just in time for release. Early audiences saw 70% unfinished effects and cheered like it was already a masterpiece, because it was.
Number 15. Rick Moranis and Sigourney Weaver basically rewrote their own characters. Here's a fun Hollywood secret. Two of the most memorable characters in Ghostbusters weren't really in the script. I mean, the characters were in the script, but not like we know them now. First, let's talk about Rick Moranis. Louis Tully, as written, was just a normal, nerdy neighbor. Fine, okay, forgettable. Moranis looked at that and thought, what if he's an accountant who really thinks explaining someone's tax shelter is flirting? So that's what he did. He improvised almost all of Louis's lines. That party scene, the one where he corners guests, tells them exactly what he paid for the salmon, and talks about lease agreements like it's a first date, was all done in one take. The crew just let the camera roll because stopping Moranis mid-performance was supposedly against union rules. Okay, it wasn't really, but it definitely should have been.
Salmon from Nova Scotia, Canada, $24.95 a pound. It only cost me $14.12 after tax, though. I'm giving this whole thing as a promotional expense. That's why I invited clients.
Second was Sigourney Weaver. Dana's possession by Zool was already in the script. The terror dogs, the transformation, all of it. But Weaver wanted to show Reitman exactly how she'd play it. She walked into her audition and asked a question nobody expected. What if I play the possession like a dog? Before Reitman could answer, she climbed onto his coffee table, dropped to all fours, howled, started gnawing on a throw pillow, and fully committed. Reitman was sold immediately. Her physical approach shaped how the possession scenes were performed, feral, unhinged, and strangely funny.
Can I talk to Dana?
There is no Dana, only Zool.
What a lovely singing voice you must have. Now, I'm going to count to 3, Zuli, and if I don't get to talk to Dana...
It gave the filmmakers a clear idea of what Dana's transformation should feel like on screen. Reitman later said that audition convinced him Weaver was the only choice. Someone willing to throw that much chaos into a living room was exactly who they needed to show a woman being possessed by an ancient Sumerian demon. And there you have it, 15 weird facts about Ghostbusters you probably never knew. Drop your favorite fact in the comments below. We read them and sometimes respond. Now don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a deep dive into the shows and movies that raised us, scared us, and left us quoting lines decades later.